Since League of Legends launched in 2009, there has been countless patches that in some way broke the game's balance. There is one specific patch in 2015 that is credited not only with disrupting the game's balance in solo queue, but for ruining the 2015 Worlds Tournament. This very same patch resulted in multiple champions having a 100% win rate at Worlds, in the games where they weren't banned of course, because they were banned in almost every single game. It doesn't stop there though. This patch was absolutely devastating for solo queue. These charts show the ban rates for the last 10 years of 3 different champions. Can you guess when this patch released? Oh, and don't worry, we'll be looking at the win rates later. This nightmare of a patch had such an impact that to this day, almost 10 years later, it is still brought up when discussing balance in League, especially the topic of competitive integrity. If you played League almost 10 years ago, you're probably having flashbacks to this. If you didn't play in 2015, you're probably wondering how Riot let this happen. This video is going to cover the story of Worlds 2015, and the legacy of one of the most infamous patches of all time, 5.16, the Juggernaut update. But first, let me introduce you to this video's sponsor, Exit Lag. There is nothing worse than having high ping in any online game. Except maybe playing versus a ranged top lane. High ping can be caused by inefficient routing to the game servers by your ISP. Exit Lag optimizes data routing, which can result in you having a much lower ping, in whichever game you choose to play. Exit Lag can lower your packet loss, reduce lag in your game, and just overall increase the stability of your connection. Depending on your location, Exit Lag could improve your experience massively, and the best part is you can try it completely for free. They also now offer multiplayer plans, so you and your duo, or even your squad, can all use Exit Lag for a reduced price. The client is easy to download and set up. By clicking the link in the description below, you're able to try Exit Lag for free for 3 days to see how well it works for you. I really like that you're able to download it, try it out, and see what kind of results you get before actually paying for anything. This way there's nothing to lose, except for your lag of course. Thank you very much to Exit Lag for sponsoring this video, and let's jump back into it. The goal of patch 5.16 was to take 4 champions who Riot felt lacked a real identity within the game and rework them into a brand new type of champion, the Juggernaut. Riot wanted Juggernaut-type champions to be built around brute force. They said that they should be powerful, durable, immobile, and melee. They are League's hulking titans who in the late game would be super tanky carries. Their intent was that these champions would be very strong, but vulnerable to being peeled and kited. For inspiration, they looked to Nasus, who they considered to be the prototype Juggernaut. Before jumping into details of the exact changes that they made, I have to point something out. We're going to look at 4 champions, and if you're a new player, you might be surprised, because 3 out of the 4 reworks that we are going to cover are no longer in the game. Yes, almost every champion included in this update have since been reworked. Riot eventually decided that the direction they took for these champions was not the best for the game, and brought them in a different direction later. To start with, we're going to take a look at Mordekaiser, but because he was such a strange champion, you need to understand what he was like before the Juggernaut patch. His passive made it so that he would shield himself for a % of the damage that he dealt. His Q gave his next basic attack bonus range, magic damage, and would bounce to 3 nearby enemies. If there were no nearby enemies, it would deal a ton of extra damage to the target instead. His W gave him or his ally bonus armor and magic resist for a period of time. While the buff was active, enemies near him or his ally would take magic damage every second. Eventually, they made it so that when he cast W on an ally, he would also cast it on himself, and he and his ally would move faster toward each other. His E was magic damage in a cone. That is literally it. His ult did damage over time to an enemy and healed him for the same amount. If the target died while under the effects of his ult, the target would come back as a ghost controllable by Mordekaiser, with bonus attack damage for 45 seconds. Mord would also get a % of their bonus health and also their ability power as bonus stats. So the champion was very weird to begin with, and the rework would make him even weirder. In the Juggernaut update announcement, they acknowledged that Mord was a difficult champion to balance because of his unique mechanics. They also noted that he was an AP burst mage typically played in a solo lane. But they wanted to try something crazy, and oh boy, was that ever an understatement. They announced that he would now be a duo lane Juggernaut to provide an alternative option to a marksman pick.
Huh?
The first change that has to be mentioned right away is to his W. It now had a passive attached to it, making it so that when he last hit a minion, he received the full experience for killing the minion, rather than splitting the experience with his lane partner. The support would still receive their portion of the experience as per normal. The Juggernaut post itself even had in the post, word for word, Mordekaiser, unless he dies horribly beforehand, will always hit level 6 way before his lane opponents. What could possibly go wrong? That was just the start of the changes. The next most important change was to his ultimate. It had a new passive attached to it too, called Dragon Force. If Mordekaiser hit the dragon, it would be cursed for 10 seconds. When it died, if it was cursed, he would enslave its soul as a controllable ghost. This dragon ghost had 100% of the dragon's maximum health, plus some of Mordekaiser's for good measure. It dealt 100% of the dragon's AD and AP, and also Mordekaiser's bonus AD. This meant that if Mordekaiser's team got dragon, they now had dragon on their team. If you tried to teamfight, you would be fighting the dragon with the actual stats of the dragon. If you chose to not fight Mordekaiser's team plus dragon, then they could just group up and push down towers. Oh, and it had a global leash range, so if he wanted to, he could split push with dragon from the other side of the map. You're probably thinking, okay, I understand how this champion would become a balancing nightmare. But we're not done with Mord yet. See, his Q was changed to empower his next 3 basic attacks. At max rank, each of those 3 basic attacks dealt 3 times the damage of the last one. This meant that his third attack would deal 180 damage plus 270% of his attack damage or 180% of his ability power. If math isn't your strong suit, this should sum it up for you. The initial reaction regarding the strength of his rework was pretty mixed. Many players felt that Mord simply didn't stand a chance because he was a melee champion who was basically always going to be playing against ranged champions in bot lane. Many players felt that Mordekaiser should not have been reworked in this way at all. If Riot wanted a champion to be a melee bot lane pick and take the dragon as a pet, then Riot should have just designed a new champion for that purpose. The whole premise of having the dragon was cool, but it did feel like a gimmick that would always either be way too good or way too weak. Some people felt that Mordekaiser's old design just didn't work the way Riot intended though, and that they did the right thing by reworking him and giving him a clear-cut defined role. The overall reception, even in terms of strength, was pretty mixed.
This is like complete garbage. I don't think we'll see this in LCS anytime soon, but who knows?
I think that was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life.
Remember those words, because we'll be talking about the impact that these reworks had on competitive later. But first, we have more reworks to cover. Next up is Skarner, and the most interesting change in him was the addition of his Crystal Spire passive. Whenever Skarner was in the game, 6 Crystal Spires would appear that you could capture. The team that captured a Spire would get gold and temporary vision. Skarner, though, would receive boost to his attack speed, movement speed, and mana regen if he was near a Spire that his team controlled. They also made his W shield scale with his percent health, which made him quite a bit tankier. His E also now made it so his next auto attack stunned that target, which was obviously a large buff. These may not sound like huge changes, but this version of Skarner was extremely broken on release. Even that is still an understatement. Skarner's numbers were so overtuned that he actually had one of the highest win rates ever seen in solo queue. His overall win rate was sitting at about 65%, and depending on what stats you were looking at, it got as high as 74%. He was so good that it became a meme in the community. There was a post on the League of Legends subreddit where someone announced that they had actually managed to win a game against Skarner, with one of the top comments asking if Skarner had just gone AFK. Riot quickly responded, with Meddler mentioning in a forum post that Skarner was way too strong and that he would be hotfix nerfed at the earliest possible opportunity. Less than 1 week after the rework launched, Skarner was nerfed pretty hard. His base stats W and E were all hit, with his E in particular having its numbers significantly reduced. In the same notes that covered Skarner's hotfix, Riot's Skarzard said the following: Skarner released at the strongest state we've seen a character pretty much ever. Considering that this is the same game that had released Xin Zhao, that quote really says a lot. I wanted to mention here, when Skarner was reworked again in 2024, he also needed a hotfix nerf because he was simply too strong. Skarner and rework being in the same sentence is a bad omen for the League community. The next rework is Darius, and his changes were pretty simple. He already had his passive, Hemorrhage, which caused the enemy to bleed when attacked. It stacked up to 5 times. The rework added the Blood Rage effect, which triggered when he got 5 stacks of his passive on someone, or when he executed someone with his ult. This increased the damage he dealt and applied maximum stacks of his passive to any enemy he hit. Darius actually received buffs in the same hotfix that heavily nerfed Skarner. They said that Darius was underperforming compared to the other Juggernauts. They increased the damage and healing of his Q by quite a lot. They mentioned in the announcement post that Darius should be a pentakill machine, and, well, they definitely succeeded in that.
Triple pressure on all the lanes.
Oh, be careful. Here's the jump in. It's a 2-man ult. He catches balls. Sneaky is out. There's a turret alive that they gotta be careful. A big knockback, and that's the kill into Morgana. Azir goes down as well, but the dunks are coming through. A double kill for Balls. A triple kill for Balls. Holy cow.
Kill!
Kill for Balls. Holy cow. That's what he's been picking Darius.
Darius would reach over a 90% ban rate in solo queue, by far the highest ban rate he has ever had. We'll be looking at his pro play in Pack 2, but first we need to look at Garen. They gave him a new passive on his ult that made it so that the most recent enemy to kill one of his teammates would be marked as the villain. His basic attacks and each hit of his spin dealt 1% of their maximum health as true damage. They also made it so that Garen's ult would deal true damage to the villain. The intent here was that Garen would have a unique role in that he could revenge kill people easily. They thought this would also match his character fantasy of being a protector of the weak. This patch would also give Garen his highest win rate and ban rate of all time, which, as you've probably noticed, is a trend with these reworks. With that, we have covered all the reworks included in the Juggernaut update. The reception to each rework was pretty mixed, with the main point being that every single one of them ended up with ridiculous ban rates and very high win rates. The impact these champions had on the game cannot be exaggerated enough. Keep in mind, this patch dropped just 1 month before the start of Worlds, which we'll talk about next. Actually, we won't be talking about Worlds yet, because there are still 2 more champions that absolutely need to be included in this discussion. While there were only 4 champions reworked in the Juggernaut patch, Fiora and Gangplank are often mentioned when talking about Worlds 2015. The reason for this is simple. Both Fiora and Gangplank also received full reworks within a couple of months of Worlds. Fiora's rework was barely 2 weeks before the release of the Juggernaut patch. When she launched, she was seen as so weak that she was actually hotfix buffed 5 days later. She also very quickly hit an 80% ban rate and was seen as an absolute terror in solo queue. Rest in peace to this champion, gone but not forgotten. Well, just 15 days before Fiora's rework, Gangplank had also received a complete rework, as part of the Burning Tides event, which I happen to have a full video covering that I'll link down below. Gangplank's win rate was actually pretty low on release. This wasn't because he was weak, it's just that players struggled to learn how to play him properly at first. And as you can tell by his ban rate, people were aware of his strength, especially in higher elos. Between his release and the start of Worlds, Gangplank was also nerfed in 2 consecutive patches, because he was instantly a priority ban in competitive. When you look at all the tournaments leading up to Worlds, both Fiora and Gangplank were very contested picks, being banned in the vast majority of games. So that means that when the Juggernaut patch had launched, there were actually 6 champions that were all considered to be extremely strong and very high priority bans in solo queue as a result of recent reworks. And not only that, a patch 2 weeks before the start of Worlds included nerfs to Fiora, Mordekaiser, and Gangplank. Keep that in mind as we fast forward to Worlds 2015.
Mordekaiser ban, first of its kind that we will see. It has actually been left up with Gangplank going down.
There's a Gangplank ban. How can I hold all of these top lane Juggernauts in my champion select here? Mousing over Darius and Gangplank as well. I don't like the combination, but it looks like they're gonna lock it in.
Mordekaiser and Gangplank were by far the most contested picks of the entire tournament. Gangplank had a 100% presence, being picked or banned in literally every single match. Mordekaiser had a 98.6% presence, being picked or banned in every game except for 1. When either of these champions weren't banned, this is what happened.
if a barrel explodes on multiple people, maybe a catch gorilla does combo into Stake. Chain though out, Gangplank Gold's gonna zone them away. This is not a bad fight for the Flash Rolls, but the ulti out from Nick. It's good! There's a barrel! Barrel does get it spam! Jumps in with a Flash ulti, but Carter's already taken out Prey. Flash Rolls, double kill there from Gangplank. Gonna keep running, Kuro's forced to flash out.
Mordekaiser's open. Mordekaiser's up.
We got one!
Yeah. Lock it in. You have to. We don't care about Kasing's champion pool. You gotta get that.
Look at that smirk. Look at that smirk.
Well, what's funny is H2K.
Going.
H2K is one of the 3 teams in the World Championship to ban Mordekaiser on the blue side. But it still means we're able to play it. Our first Mordekaiser of Worlds.
Let's talk about how you build your team around Mordekaiser. He brings so much pressure to the bottom lane, constantly shoving, and the extra experience he gets guarantees you're gonna out-level your opponent, so you get to the level 6 quicker, and then you immediately take Dragon. You can just chain objectives right after taking the Dragon, use that Ghost, run straight mid, open up the entire jungle. It's all about that early snowball.
Had home guard, will land in the stun, but a 3-man pulverize says hello. G4 is gonna be the first Ghost of the game, and here it is. Maybe they can change a bit more. Ryu is in. It's not a dragon, but they're going to be killing everyone all the same. Ryu cannot get the ulti off in time, though, stunned up. But we got more targets here. Odwamna had held aggro. Now it's Kasing. He's got to run. The turret might kill him, and it will, actually. Mas getting chased down by Ryu shouldn't be a hard one for him. Hjarnan steals the kill away, as is his right as the Mordekaiser player. Big engage from Kasing, knocks up 3, and the dragon is still chasing the enemy AD carry. Lloyd's got to be careful, and down they go. A double kill. The dragon value is big on this one. All is well. There's a triple kill. They're going for 4. Now will it be the pentakill? Go, Dragon, Mordekaiser. The dragon takes it. In they go. Warlock says no.
Mordekaiser and Gangplank each made it through Champ Select 4 times, and they won every game they were picked in. Since both had a 100% win rate for the entire tournament, you're probably surprised to hear that Mordekaiser and Gangplank both made it through the ban phase during Fnatic and EDG's second match. And both of these champions were actually played. So how did both maintain a 100% win rate?
Wow, both of them are up. What do Edward Gaming take?
So,
Gangplank and Mord are available.
As Kobe just said here.
I would take Gangplank for sure
Gangplank is the normal first pick.
Wow.
However, Fnatic as a team has shown a lot of picks that could do well against Gangplank, like a River. But Fnatic will get in this one. EDG really want to play around bot lane in this game.
Then who plays Gangplank on Fnatic? Has Featherman put in the time to play?
Well, 20 minutes in, the game was pretty even overall. Both teams were within 1,000 gold of each other, with EDG having a 2-dragon advantage. Just as both teams were rotating to dragon, the game was paused with only 1 kill on the board.
I've heard from production that there is a keyboard-related issue with Rainover. The Q key, actually, specifically. So we're getting that resolved.
Very important.
Getting that resolved right now. The players did unpause the game to test whether or not Rainover could cast Q. For obvious reasons, the test did fail, I'm afraid. So the guys are busy triaging the problem. We need to get that spell once again resolved.
The proposed situation in which there's a known bug with Gragas where you can't use your Q until you die. All right, well, because of the game-altering bug that prevented Rainover from casting Gragas' Q, the game will undergo a full remake with new picks and bans.
As we do get into picks and bans, I do want to take a moment to clarify the situation and where we find ourselves. The issue that appeared in-game prevented Rainover from casting the Gragas Q spell. And the refereeing team, they did investigate and exhaust every single option to resolve the issue in-game, including allowing Gragas to die and attempt to resolve the matter. After the issue remained, Fnatic was then offered the opportunity to remake, which they accepted. That is, as per the rules, the remake will now include new picks and bans because team strategies were revealed, including playstyle. Gragas will remain enabled because of the popularity of the champion on the current patch. The remake will be starting shortly with picks and bans. So let's shake this off and talk about Mordekaiser and, in my opinion, GP. Do we think teams are going to allow both of these champions to once again go through picks and bans?
Mordekaiser and Gangplank both would be banned in the remade match. Gragas was allowed to be played in the remake, however it was later announced that he would be banned for the rest of the tournament to avoid this situation repeating. This was a much bigger deal than it may seem at first. See, champion diversity in the jungle was extremely low at this point. The top pick was Elise, who had a 97% presence for the tournament. Next to her was both Rek'Sai and Gragas, who were pretty close together in terms of pick priority. And that was pretty much it. Sometimes Lee Sin would make an appearance, but really there were only 3 main picks for the jungle across all of Worlds. And one of those champions had just been removed from the tournament completely, along with Lux and Ziggs, who both had not made a single appearance anyway. Now is a good time to remind you that at this point, League did not have 10 bans for each game. Back then, there were still only 6. This meant that the team on red side had a pretty significant disadvantage in every game of the tournament. The team on blue side was able to basically force red side to ban out the OP things, because if they didn't, then blue side would get to first pick it. On top of that, this gave blue side the freedom to target ban players on red side, because they didn't have to worry as much about banning all of the crazy overpowered stuff, which there was a lot of. Mordekaiser and Gangplank were the obvious contested picks, but then there was Elise in the jungle and Lulu in mid. Lulu in particular was the mid lane pick of the tournament with a 95% presence. These 4 picks alone meant that even if red side chose to ban as many OP things as possible, they would still be leaving something strong for blue side to first pick. Alright, so we've talked a lot about Mordekaiser and Gangplank, but what about the other recent reworks? Well, let's start with Darius.
They can feel to collapse. They gotta finish it.
Amazing can jump over the wall. Who's gonna win the smite? It goes to the red team. That goes to Origin. Here's the battle. Karsa alone in front, absorbing, gets dunked. Soaz is online. Maple's down. He's still going. He doesn't get the third as Azonius comes across. He gets some damage on his stake. He gets the kill. He's on the hill, and it's gonna to save the game. Soaz gets a pentakill after Baron.
Darius was picked a lot. He was by far the most played top lane champ with 38 games. The next closest, Fiora, had 19 games. Fiora was seen as a more technical champion overall, and without much time to learn how to play her, not many pros were actually picking her. Marin and Smeb both played her the most, and they had a lot of success. Marin actually won every game where he picked Fiora, although to be fair, SKT only lost 1 game at Worlds that year, so it's not really a fair example. That said, Fiora was definitely strong, and Marin was able to really show what he was capable of.
Marin has been an absolutely immaculate Fiora player so far this World Championship.
And SKT HQ with the deep wards at the bottom. Marin gonna go all in.
Let's take a look. Level 15 to level 13. Zip's gonna be able to proc the Grand Challenge. Noxian Might will not even get activated.
It's not as easy as I'm saying here. Now you end up walking into SKT instead.
Well, there's the shuffle. Faker's got Empress Divine.
Nice
That's a
flash again.
2-man body slam, and Faker's down. The Empress Divine not even used. The Gnaw is not going to get channeled just yet. Bengi's going to be the next focus. Yana was able to kill Faker. Now Marin's looking for Ryu and might just find him. Grand Challenge is down, but Ryu's going to stay alive and get away. Bang! Left uncontested on the back line. He continues to auto-attack. Wolf with a 2-man knockup. Yanin, get in the fight, man. No auto-attacks down yet. The Boomerang goes out. Not going to fly slow. Wow! Marin just eviscerates.
Beautiful play.
That's a double.
What an outplay.
And SKT demolish H2K.
Speaking of SKT, they of course made it to the Grand Finals, along with Ku Tigers. Most of the impact of the Juggernaut patch though came in the form of bans. Mordekaiser and Gangplank were banned in each match of the series, and Darius wasn't picked or banned a single time. By this point in the tournament, players were opting to deal with Darius by picking either Renekton or Fiora, and Ku Tigers banned Renekton in every match versus SKT. They also picked Fiora in 2 of those matches. In the final match of Worlds 2015, there was not one single Juggernaut picked, but SKT did ban 3 of the recently reworked champions as they were playing from red side. So while SKT did not get to pick any Juggernauts, what they did have was a certain mid laner who you may have heard of. He also happened to have a pocket pick Ryze, who by the way was only played by 1 other person in the entire tournament for 1 single game that they lost. For players that weren't playing League almost 10 years ago, there's another twist to this story.
Then this poor Nard top lane right now. Mid lane turret also goes down. The flash engage from Faker.
Yeah, there's the Rune Prison in there. All of the spells, all of the time. Faker
the 1v1 against Pawn.
We spoke about 6 champions that were reworked right before Worlds, but Rise was also reworked in 2015 at the end of April, and in patch 5.12, which was at the end of June, he received some big changes as well. It's not fair to say that this was right before Worlds or anything like that, but it's something at least worth mentioning. Rise had been hovering around a 40 to 45% win rate in solo queue at this point, and basically no one was playing him in competitive, except for one person.
He's definitely not expecting that one. Just gonna say it.
Yeah, and now we get to see Faker's Rise. When you push Faker's champion pool, he just goes back to Rise. Everyone had to do the right thing to avoid dying there, which is a little bit dangerous.
Flashes were blown in the mid lane as well. Looks like Faker and Kuro went hard, so there's no flash for this. Hojin in a real bad situation with the last bit of mana. Faker takes him down 2v1.
Base for a long time, and he's waiting to TP somewhere. He's going to bot lane now.
Just going into the river brush, but it's going to be Kuro getting dropped immediately.
Ku has no idea how to deal with Faker. That is the thing that is losing them this game. 4-0-1, 100% kill participation, and also 2 of those kills were 1v2s, and he didn't even have to burn flash while killing them. 2 inhibitors down. Here SKT comes.
On the hunt, goes in. That's going to be Hojin in a real sticky situation. He goes down a full 3-man Gnar ultimate. That's going to be smacked down now. Eyes onto the AD carry, but the support hits. It's going to be Kuro out safely. Prey, however, has to run away from his base. SK Telecom looking to take down the final Nexus turrets. It does not look good for Kuro and his team. Ku Tigers are falling. SKT will be your first ever 2-time world champions!
SKT infamously won Worlds 2015, and became the first team to win Worlds twice. Despite the Juggernaut patch being considered one of the worst balanced patches in League of Legends history, many people remember Worlds 2015 very fondly. While it is common to hear people say that the patch ruined the tournament, as a spectator, it was actually a very fun Worlds to watch. It was the most diverse Worlds tournament League had ever had at that point, largely because so many OP things simply had to be banned. When there are broken champions like Mordekaiser and Gangplank, their impact isn't always obvious because they rarely make it into a game. Most of the impact of these champions is in how they forced players to draft around them, and how Red Side was forced to ban them or potentially deal with them as a first pick. The question of competitive integrity also comes into play here, because the patch that these players qualified for Worlds on was a very different patch from the one that Worlds was actually played on. This is not great for players, because they needed to figure out the meta as they played. Picks or comps that they had practiced or they planned to play may now be completely irrelevant. At the same time, there is a valid argument that part of being a very skilled player is being able to adapt on the fly, to be able to work with your team to figure out what works in the meta and how you want to play out each game. The Juggernaut update, whether you enjoyed it or not, is one of the most influential patches in the game's history. It is by far the biggest example of Riot shaking up the meta before a Worlds tournament, and something they now apparently try to avoid doing, at least to that extent. In hindsight, many people consider the Juggernaut update to be a failure overall, not just because of the impact on Worlds, or even for its insane impact on solo queue, but because 3 of the 4 champions in the patch have since been reworked again. I'm curious, what do you think about Worlds 2015? Did Riot make a huge mistake by having such big changes so close to Worlds? Or, as a viewer, did you like having so many champion picks and more chaotic games? Before finishing up, I wanted to take a moment to thank you all for supporting the channel. Every like or comment really does go a long way, and again, thank you for watching.